The letters are not relative in size. They're inconsistent. They're all pretty big, whether they're supposed to be a capital letter or not. Look at the angle of the letters. If you can pick out, like an M, M's are pretty prevalent, W or an I. Look at the different ways they form it. It's not consistent. That's your dysgraphia. And I've had much, much worse. These are just two that I grabbed. Look at even how he spelled his name, how big the R is, and then a capital N at the end. And I have a little boy that I was working with this week, and his name begins with an A, and he wrote capital A for his name, and then on down in his story that he was writing, the sentence began with A something, 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 but he didn't capitalize it. And I said, now, you need to put a capital letter here. That made no sense to him. He didn't know what a capital A was. He was making it like a lowercase a. I'm always surprised every week by something a kid does that I never thought of it like that. He didn't know the circular lowercase a was not a capital, even though he writes his name with the TPA, capital A. I don't know why he had that confusion, but he didn't get it. And I don't know if he gets it yet or not. I don't know. We'll work on it. But they have lots of confusions that we just don't see. Oh, gotta go too far. Okay, with dysgraphia, often, not always, but I'd say more than half the time, they'll have an odd pencil grip. Let me show you. Now, I'm left-handed. There's a higher prevalence of left-handedness among dyslexic. But just because you're left-handed doesn't make you dyslexic. Okay, we all know the tripod grip. The dyslexic individual will get that thumb wrapped around it somewhere, somehow. Like that, so that the thumb is moving the pen. Or what I do, I like to bury my thumb. That's what I do when I write. They'll have some kind of a death grip on that pencil, trying to get the neuron message to the brain of what they're doing. This way we're using fine motor skills and it's just not getting to the brain. This way, I know what's happening. I can feel it better and I'm controlling it more. So look at how your children hold their pencil. See if they have that dysgraphic grip. Also, your little bitty kids, they'll be up on their knees, they'll be bent over their paper, they're looking at the end of the pencil to see what's coming out, because they can't just do it and think about it. Okay? Alrighty, inconsistent slant of their tall letters, odd use of space between the words. Those words will either be all scrunched up or wide apart. And have you noticed how sometimes on the margin of the paper, it starts here, and it goes down, 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 to where you can only get like two words on the line? Susan Barton mentioned that that could be Asperger's, a sign of that. Inconsistent letter sizes, they can't copy from the board. Just like you guys were doing, you had to look up and down and up and down and up and down to get their symbols drawn. That's what they're doing. They're not writing words on their paper, they're drawing symbols, like I had you do at the beginning. They don't know what's coming up next, neither did you. You had to look back at the board to figure it out. And one of the things I do when I do a dyslexia testing is called the Slingerland test. And there's a far point and a near point copying subtest in it. The far point has about 3 sentences, 30 words, of which only about 4 or 2 syllables, and they have to copy it. First we read it to make sure they can read it, then I just say copy it, and I time them. And my husband's right there at the other end of the table, and he's counting eye movements. How many times did they look at the board, down here, up at the board, down here, up at the board, just like you guys were doing. And honestly, it will take them about 6-7 minutes to copy it. They will look up to the board and down to the board anywhere from 60 to over 100 times. And sometimes they will get to the point where they don't look down at their paper at all. They're just looking at the board doing this. That's what your kids are doing too. And then we do a near point copy. Where the words are on the paper, here's 10 words, copy them on these 10 lines. The same thing. They will look up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down 60, 70 times. And then I'll say, okay, now will you read these words? Just like I showed you those words in isolation. I'll say, okay, you copied them beautifully. Would you read those to me now? They're crazy. It's all different words, not what they wrote. So that shows even that they may be able to copy it correctly, that doesn't mean they got it. They don't know what they copied. They can't read it. It makes no sense to them. So you can't just look at their notebook and say, oh, he's doing fine. He's got it all right here in his notebook. No, he copied well. That's all he did. Now, my kids, sometimes they have trouble with cursive and sometimes they don't. That's like a 50-50 toss-up. Okay, reversals. We have learned that that's normal development during the first 2 years of handwriting. So if they are continuing in 2nd grade and beyond, we've got a problem. They can't remember which side the stick goes on. They can't remember if the stick goes up like a B or down like a P. Here's a little trick from Susan Barton. They take their left hand, and I don't say left hand because I know they don't know left. I notice if they're left-handed or right-handed, so it's either the hand that holds your pencil or the hand that doesn't hold your pencil. That's how I teach them. And I'll have kids in 5th grade still looking at their thumb. I'll say, put your thumb up, there's your B. You have it with you always. Look where the stick is, look where the circle is. There's your B. Get in the habit of checking it. Every time they do it wrong and have to go back and correct it, they are programming their brain. Is it this way or that way? Or this way or that way? But if you can get them to consistently check it every single time for like 2 weeks and not make that mistake, they'll have it. They've got it figured out. They're good. But the problem is they won't stop and take the time to check it first. Whenever you make a mistake and you've made that neuron path in your brain that this is how it goes, it takes 10 consistent, real life using it times to override that trace, to correct it. So say we're on the 9th time, they get in a hurry, they don't check it, they put the stick on the wrong side, okay, we gotta start all back over from square one. And it's not like you can just write it 10 times real fast. It's gotta be real life situation of application, that they're actually thinking and using it correctly. Okay? So that's the reason they should check that. And then, if they learn the B, the stick goes up like a balloon, balloon goes up in the air. If you turn it upside down, it's a P, like in the word pig, and pigs go down in the mud. So up in the air like a balloon, or down in the mud like a pig. And if they can get to where they do that, well, in good shape. Don't let them use both hands to figure out BD. They're already confused. They won't know which hand to look at. Okay? Just one hand. Keep it simple. And the reason they have so much problems is they have poor visual memory for flat two-dimensional symbols. Remember, the right side of the brain is bigger. It likes to think 3D. And I was reading a thing on the internet just last night, a study coming out, and I believe this, and I've mentioned this before. I think in pictures, not words. How many of you think in pictures? Whenever somebody's talking to you, you see the picture in your head. Yay. Only 1, maybe 2, 3, there we go. I cannot listen to a book on tape while I'm driving. Forget it. Because I'm in the story. I see the picture. I'm not seeing the road, I'm not seeing the cars, I'm not seeing anything. I'm in the picture of the story. That blew me away when I heard that, because I thought everybody listened and thought in pictures. I didn't know you could think in words. So that's another thing of dyslexia. We're 3D. Okay, typical reading mistakes. This one you're going to see a lot of. And they will write it. G-R-I-L for girl. F-R-I-S-T for first. They get that R and the I confused. Remember, R and L are 2 of those letters that just slide around for them. They're big and deep and non-directionality confusion. It could be the M's and the W's, the U's and the N's, the number 9 and the letter P. I see a lot of 3's written backwards. They have a hard time with suffixes like ED. Like we saw in that little boy's paper, jumped. Yes, you do hear a T. ED can make the T sound. But he should know by now, ED is a suffix you add on in 3rd grade, don't you think? They omit their function words like in, at, of, and the. They just slide over those or they'll say the for A, on for in. And it's so heartbreaking because I'm doing DIBELS, oral reading fluency, and I'm hoping this kid will show that he's reading a little bit better, getting a little bit higher score, and they'll make those kinds of mistakes. A for go. And I'm thinking, you know that word, but they just don't pay attention to it. And then if they're reading a predictable story like you read, There Was an Old Lady, they may substitute horse for pony because it makes sense in the story, but they didn't read it. They're just simply reading by context. Okay, everyone can read up to a point, and your dyslexic children who have high IQs and are doing fantastic everywhere but in reading, they're going to come up with their own strategies. But those strategies are going to start failing by 3rd grade. And truthfully, the pressure we're putting on kids to do more and more and more, and be reading and writing in kindergarten and 1st grade, I think we're going to start seeing it more in 1st and 2nd grade, not 3rd grade. You're getting into less predictable text. The teacher's not reading it every day for a solid week to where it's memorized. They're having to read on their own. There's more to read, more to memorize. They honestly think you look at a string of letters and you just know the word. You don't have to read it from the first through the last syllable. They just know it. How do you people just know these words? That's how they think it's supposed to be. Multi-syllable words just blow them away. And they won't qualify for special ed, but we don't want them in special ed anyhow. That's not where my kids belong. Phonemic awareness. That's the number one thing. Phonemic awareness is the core and causal factor that separates normal readers from disabled readers. That's by G. Reed Lund, who was the president or the head honcho on the National Reading Panel for like 25 years. If they lack phonemic awareness, they will not be a good reader and speller, bottom line. And in the Barton system, book level 1, 5 lessons on phonemic awareness. Don't skip that book. When I first started and I had an older student come to me for tutoring, I thought, I don't want to get off this book. That's going to be embarrassing. It's already embarrassing. He has to come see me, so I just jumped right in. And boy, did it fall apart on me 6 months later when we got into really tough stuff. He couldn't do it. So I had to embarrass myself and back up and let's do this first. So always start with the phonemic awareness, book level 1, and get through that. Now, I've had students that are doing great with phonemic awareness who come see me, and we might get through that whole book 2 or 3 sessions. Because I'll move as fast as I can, but as slow as I must. And some kids may take 3 months to get through it. And it is pulling teeth all the way. So you just adapt yourself to the speed that your child can handle and get through it. But you have to do phonemic awareness. It's the ability to hear and manipulate the sounds in just a 1-syllable word in your head. You're not looking at any letters. Once you introduce letters, you're talking phonics. You're not doing phonemic awareness anymore. It's all in your head. So I'll say it, you say it. Bit. Change the first sound to change the vowel to ah. Change the last sound to Good job. Very good. So that's pretty much manipulating the sounds. And then there's lots of different activities as you go through with the phonemic awareness. That was just kind of the easy first ones. Okay, it's essential that they have this. I'm sorry. That's okay. That's okay. All right, now we're getting up to like, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade and beyond. This is a paragraph I took out of a 5th grade social studies books. Okay? I want you to read that. I've got the multi-syllable words and the tricky words underlined. So just read that to yourself. If you can. Can you see? Okay? Good enough? How many of you first said the farmers? I did too the first time. Yeah, you said the farmers, then when you got to Constitution, you probably realized it was framers. Who else said farmers instead of framers when you first went through? Good, good. I did too. Okay, now, I can guarantee you, half my kids will say farmers. Okay, now, to the child who cannot read well, whoops, they would see this. They're going to say the